Two doctors stood in my living room, badges flashing, ready to declare me incompetent so my own children could ship me off, but I already knew those men were actors wearing stolen white coats. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I am Walter Briggs, 69 years old, a retired electrical lineman with knees that complain in the rain and a workshop that smells like cedar and machine oil. Storm work trained me to fear the right things and to trust checklists. I still count bolts, label coffee cans, and listen for the hum a bad transformer makes before it fails. My wife, Ruth, has been gone 4 years. In that time I learned to cook an acceptable pot roast, to fold fitted sheets, to put the deed and will in the safe, and to tell the difference between loneliness and quiet. When the porch light stays on too late, my neighbor Tom Garcia, retired firefighter, steady as a ladder, knocks without asking why. We raised 2 children in this house. Scott is the older, a salesman who arrives with concern that spends like a plan. Hannah is gentler, a school staffer with Ruth's eyes and a talent for smoothing rough edges. Life has been hard on her husband, Eric. Jobs slipped out from under him the way wet boards do. Their daughter, Junie, draws blue houses with orange suns and calls me Pop. When Ruth died, the weather in our family changed. Love remained, but money and worry began to speak more loudly than sense. The first shift was small, the kind you only notice if you live by habit. Sunday dinner, my spaghetti, Ruth's note on the recipe card, more basil than you think, Walt. Scott brought a tote from a senior fair, Kelsey opened cabinets and helped with mail. Hannah moved my pill organizer to a safer place and then set it back an inch from where it had been. At the table, they asked about batteries, driving, sleep. At the bottom of that tote sat a glossy Seabridge senior care brochure, and tucked inside it a card for Evergreen Memory Clinic that did not look like it came from a community table. Junie drew me with a gray smile and wrote Pop in purple letters. I told her spaghetti had 2 G's, like giggle. I washed dishes later and found the bank envelope handled and retucked, the house feeling watched. 2 days after, a polished voice called to confirm your capacity assessment with Evergreen Memory Clinic, Thursday at 11, we'll send 2 clinicians to your home, your family scheduled it. I said yes when she read my address out loud because it is hard to lie about your own house. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the places where cautious hands had landed on my life that week, all in the name of help. So I did what a lineman does when the sky turns the color of trouble. I phoned Tom. I phoned my lawyer. I bought 2 voice loggers from a supply shop and set them where they could hear what mattered. I told myself I was being careful, not paranoid. I expected the aches and the quiet that come with age. I had not expected to learn how to spot a forged medical license. Dad, my son, Scott, said, nudging his wife a little forward like I might try to run, this is Dr. Levin and Dr. Park from Evergreen Memory Clinic. They're just here to help. Help. That word has done a lot of damage in this world. Dr. Levin's ID card listed a license number with 1 too many digits. Dr. Park's stethoscope still wore the stiff kink of new plastic, like it had never touched anything other than a store display. They brought a packet thick with forms and a pen with a rubber grip. My daughter, Hannah, hovered near the mantel, eyes fixed on Ruth's photograph. She would not look at me. That told me everything. We've noticed some lapses, Scott said, clearing his throat. Leaving the front door unlocked. Repeating stories. The stove. I burned toast, I said. And told the same story at Thanksgiving that I told in July. 6 kids out of 10 do the same thing on social media every day. Hannah flinched. Dad, please don't make this ugly. "We're here for a simple capacity assessment," Dr. Levin said, smiling the way salesmen smile at the end of the month. "A quick Montreal cognitive assessment, a consent form for a short respite placement, 3 to 5 days at Seabridge Senior Care, just to get you stabilized." "Stabilized like a ladder," I said softly, "or like a patient?" Nobody answered. I made coffee. The doctors declined. Hannah took hers with milk and tremor. While the pot hissed, I caught the whisper between Scott and his wife in the hallway, "Make sure he signs the voluntary admission. Once we have that, the power of attorney is automatic." Automatic, like doors. Like betrayal. I set the mugs down, and the doctors stacked their clipboards. "We'll start with some questions. What's today's date?" "June 21st, I said. "Ruth's birthday." That part was not true. It was March, but I wanted to see who would pretend to know my wife's birthday. Neither doctor blinked. I gave them the wrong city, too. They smiled and made neat pen marks in the little boxes, pleased with their progress. I kept talking, slow and rambling, like a man whose mind wandered ahead of him on a leash. When Dr. Park slid the consent form across the coffee table, I leaned back. "Before we sign anything," I said, "I'd like to show you all something in the garage." "No," Scott said quickly. "Dad, let's not play games." "I'm tired, Walter," Hannah added. "Please." "I know you are," I said, and stood anyway. 2 minutes. "It's about the water heater. Safety issue." I shuffled down the hallway with the stiffness age gives you for free. They came, because fear of a lawsuit is stronger than greed for a signature, at least for 2 minutes. The garage was cool and smelled like winter tires. My workbench faced a wall of pegboard, an old radio blinking its soft green eye. Next to it sat a chunky black device, the kind you would not notice if you did not know what you were looking at. "Say hello," I told the bench. "Hello," the bench answered, tinny and polite. Dr. Levin frowned. Scott frowned harder. Hannah's hand rose to her mouth. "It's called a voice logger," I said. "I installed it yesterday after you called the family meeting. It starts recording when it hears voices in this room." I put another in the living room under the magazine rack. "They have good ears." Scott laughed, but the sound broke in the middle. "Dad, this is paranoid." "Maybe," I said. "But paranoia is a lot like a seatbelt, annoying until you need it." I could feel the room heating with panic. The doctors shifted, calculating exit paths. Scott reached for the papers like he could shove them back into a universe where they had not been caught. Hannah's eyes filled. Her mascara had run before in this house, but for different reasons. "Let's go back inside," I said. "We've got more company coming." We returned to the living room. The second hand on the grandfather clock clicked past the 12, hitting the top of the hour with a clean brass note. The front door opened without a knock, deliberately. Sheriff's deputies stepped in first, followed by a woman in a slate suit who carried a leather folder stamped with the crest of the medical board, and behind them, a thin man whose badge identified him as Adult Protective Services. I had invited them last night. Dr. Levin, the slate-suited woman said, turning a sheet of paper so the room could see. "How is it you are practicing in our state with a suspended license from New Jersey and no application on file here?" He folded inside himself like paper. Dr. Park took one step for the door and met a deputy's chest. "Walter." Hannah's voice came out small. "What did you do?" "What you were trying to do to me," I said. "But legally." The deputy read out words I never thought I would hear in my living room: practicing medicine without a license, attempted financial exploitation of an elder, conspiracy. The doctors went pale, then gray. Dr. Park looked 25 and terrified. Dr. Levin looked like a man who had used a stethoscope as a prop more often than a tool. "Ma'am," the APS investigator said, turning toward Hannah, "you are not under arrest. But we need to ask about the payments to Evergreen Memory Clinic and the application to Seabridge in your name." Hannah broke. The truth came hard and ugly: Scott's friend from the gym who knew a doctor, the promise that they handle stubborn parents all the time, the fee they paid in cash because it keeps things simple. "They were worried about me," she insisted, then tripped on her own words and finally said the quiet part loud, that the house would sell for $900,000 even if it needed a roof, that my accounts were just sitting there, that Junie's braces and their car and their plans required money. "Ruth asked me to take care of you," Hannah said, like a child reciting a line in a play. "We were trying to. I have been taking care of me," I said. "And I've been helping you. You just did not like the pace of my generosity." The deputies took the doctors away in handcuffs. I stood very still and watched two white coats pass through the doorway and into a gray day. I had not expected to feel grief. But I did, grief for the parts of my children money had starved. That was not the end. A thing like this does not end with a pair of handcuffs. It ends with paperwork so thick it becomes a landscape. The next morning, at my lawyer's office, I signed a new deed. I transferred my house into a trust, one that carried a name that made my throat tighten: the Ruth and Juniper Briggs Trust. The terms were simple enough for a child to read. I would live here until I chose not to. No one could sell it without my signature. If I died, the trust would not pass through my children's hands. It would move to a local scholarship fund for girls in trade programs and to Junie's education. Hannah and Scott were not cut out of my life, but money would no longer be the engine that pulled us along. It had run hot and burned us. I also signed a durable power of attorney naming someone who would actually protect me, my neighbor, Tom Garcia, a retired firefighter who can still carry a ladder under one arm and who brought me enchiladas when Ruth died and never asked for anything in return. Tom has 3 sons who bring his trash cans in without being told. I do not need blood to trust a man. When word got out, because it always does, Scott called from a number I did not recognize. He did not ask about my day. He led with outrage, then tried apology when outrage met the same wall he had built for me. He said he had panicked, that I was slipping, that he was scared. I told him fear is allowed, but theft is not. He cried. I listened. I am a father still. Hannah came in person, shoulders tight, hands empty. She sat on Ruth's old chair and stared at her shoes. I wanted it to stop feeling hard, she whispered. The bills, the worry. I wanted to feel safe. You do not build safety by kidnapping it from someone else, I said. Her chin trembled. She nodded. She did not ask for forgiveness. That made me want to give it to her. We made rules, not promises. She will have supervised visits for a while, not because I think she will hurt me with her hands, but because she does not yet know what fear does to a person with her pen. The sheriff's office called twice more. The first time to ask if I would testify. I said yes, because a courtroom is the only place where the truth gets to stand on a box and speak into a microphone without being told it is inconvenient. The second time to tell me Dr. Levin had 2 prior complaints and that Dr. Park was a nursing student who had gotten in over his head. I said that did not erase intent. They agreed. Seabridge Senior Care sent a letter, all blue logos and a kind of apology lawyer's draft during lunch. They said a rogue contractor had approached them with pre-screened clients, that they were reviewing intake procedures. They offered me a tour. I mailed the brochure back with a note, I will choose where I go when I want to sleep in a smaller room. If you are waiting for the part with sirens and car chases, you will be disappointed. Revenge, when you are a grandfather with a sore hip and a faithful dog, is quieter. It looks like a Saturday morning in the garage where the radio plays old jazz and a 10-year-old in a paint-splattered smock asks how to sand with the grain. It looks like the letter I wrote to Junie for her 16th birthday, sealed and placed in the trust box, telling her exactly how I chose to love her mother without letting money become a leash. It looks like the day I walked through the community college and handed a check to the bursar for a fund named after Ruth that would buy toolkits for women in the electrical program. A month later, we had our reckoning. In court, under fluorescent lights and the breath of strangers, I took the stand. The prosecutor asked about the moment that doctors came into my home. I said it felt like the day a storm puts its hand on the roof and leans. The defense tried to say I had set a trap. I said I had set a table and invited the truth to sit down. When they played the recording, the clear, awful certainty in Scott's whisper about automatic power of attorney, the way Dr. Levin coached Hannah on which boxes to check for agitation, my children did not look at me. They looked at their feet. The judge looked at them the way a father does when he knows the lesson will cost more than allowance can pay. The doctors pled out. Probation for the student, jail for the man who had played physician long enough to forget there are consequences. My children were required to attend a financial exploitation program, the kind where you watch videos of people who lose everything. The judge issued a restraining order with soft edges. No contact about money, no unannounced visitors, no new paperwork without my lawyer's eyes on it. It was mercy engraved into law. On the afternoon of the verdict, I took Junie for ice cream. We sat on the tailgate of my old Ford, legs swinging, her braid tickling her shoulder. She licked a drip from the cone and looked at me with the kind of frankness only kids and the very old can manage. Mom said you are mad at her, she said. I am hurt, I answered. And I am healing. Like when I fell off my scooter and scraped my knee. Like that, I said. But bigger. She nodded like a tiny judge who had reached a decision. When my knee was healing, I still went outside. I just wore jeans. From the mouths of granddaughters. That evening, I cooked pot roast and turned the radio up until Ruth's chair did not ache to be filled. I walked out to the porch with a glass of water and watched the blue edges of day fold into night. A neighbor waved. Somewhere, a lawnmower quit. Inside, the voice logger's red light winked and went still. It would record again if it had to, but I hoped it would not. Instruments deserve rest. I know what you might be thinking, that families are broken, that love is as fragile as paper in the rain. But here is what I decided at 69, with a granddaughter's hand in mine and a house that now answers only to my signature: love is not fragile, it is stubborn. It survives foolishness. It insists on boundaries. It forgives slowly because it wants forgiveness to matter. They tried to take my life and put it behind a keypad in visiting hours. They hired men who wore certainty like a costume. I did not let them. I did not need to shout to win. I needed to pay attention, to invite the right witnesses, to sign my name where it could not be stolen. And when I finally went to bed, the house did what it always does when I tell it good night. It sighed, a little, the way Ruth used to when she rolled toward me in her sleep. I looked at the ceiling and let the quiet settle in. Not loneliness. Not anymore. Just quiet, the kind you earn.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.